In the fast-paced world of business, finding a clear path to profitability can be a challenge. Welcome to 0 to 100 with your host, Jared Guy Randolph, seasoned business and finance expert. Tune in for actionable insights and strategies to accelerate your business success.
Hello, Accelerators. Today on 0 to 100, I am very excited to introduce our guest, Brian McNally, who is the co-founder and former CEO of Melio, a medical staffing business that he and his business partner built from zero to a $50 million exit valuation. They were also recognized by Inc. 500 4 times. He's also a husband, a father, and soon to be professional MMA fighter. Living the dream. The topics that we're going to cover are everything that you should be looking at and know on your entrepreneurial journey to success. Designing with the exit in mind, empowering your employees to build a successful company culture. Before you take on that new shiny thing as a business owner, exhausting everything you possibly can in the current marketplace that you're in, and challenge everything. When you challenge everything, it makes you step up your game and truly work at the top of your field. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jared Guy Randolph. I am the founder of BoxFi. We are the nation's leading payment consultant, providing business growth solutions through payment processing. And I'm excited to share the 25-year network that I've built as an entrepreneur to help you grow your business and become more profitable. Ladies and gentlemen, let's accelerate together. Brian McNally, thank you for joining us on 0 to 100.
Pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, so this is going to be a really good conversation for the audience because what we're discussing today is how you dress your business up and make it look great to not only send it out on a date, but to marry it off and sell it to somebody. And you've done that successfully with your prior company, Melio, and that's what we're going to cover today. So thank you again. So Brian, let's discuss for the audience, because they're business owners and they're entrepreneurs, some of the key decisions that helped you build this business to be able to exit it.
I think the most important decision was designing it to be exited. So often I talk to people, and much like ourselves, I mean, we were originally, the company's born out of frustration, right? So that was our why. We worked for these large bureaucratic organizations. You know, we're creative, entrepreneurial-minded folks, and you kind of get frustrated, mired down in the red tape of a day-to-day, right? You see a problem, you want to fix it, and that's kind of how we're wired as entrepreneurs. But when you're working for someone else, you know, sometimes you can't really put your finger on it, but that's what's making you crazy, right? And me and my business partner worked together for years prior to going out on our own, and it was just always that frustration and always the lack of client focus, right? So we were salespeople, so we were always on the front lines dealing with clients, trying to address issues, never felt empowered to make things right and just do what was right for our client to maintain the relationship. It was always about our bottom line, and really a lack of foresight into, you know, if you treat people the right way today, they're going to be your client forever versus just making a couple extra dollars this quarter. So that was the frustration. And then also, ultimately, we wanted freedom in our life. That was our end goal. So that was our big why, right? So let's be different, enjoy what we're doing, actually treat people to live our values a little bit here with the goal of growing something to sell it. And that's really the key that I think for us was right from the jump. We had set out, we looked at the marketplace, saw a competitor that had gone out and sold a few years before us and saw their arc of, it was about 10 years and they grew a certain size. And we were like, we think 5 to 7 years, if we really push it, we could do a $20 million company in an exit. And that was our North Star. Everything else to us was irrelevant. So really important, I think, set out, like really have a plan. Take stock of what you want your life to look like. And before you go start this business, why are you starting it, right? And that was a huge, huge decision for us. We knew exactly where we were going and what we were trying to accomplish.
So you went into this knowing that it was going to be something that you wanted to exit. And you said 5 to 7 years, $20 million. The question is, did you actually accomplish that?
We exceeded that. So, but if not for COVID, we would have done it in year 5, 20 million. That was our target. And we had done 10 million in 2019. So business started in 2015. So heading into year 5, we did a little over 10 million. But our run rate for the year was to exceed 20 million. We were on target, and we had built the whole company culture around, whole campaign around 20 and 20 and all this kind of stuff. And everyone was excited. And 3 months into the year, COVID hits. And now we're in healthcare. So we supported specifically the revenue cycle of hospitals. So no patients, no dollars. My business grinded to a halt. We ended up losing 50% of our business in 6 weeks.
Ooh. Oh. So I want to come back to losing the 50% of the business and having to rebuild, especially in such a trying time. But one of the key things that I'm hearing from you is that the success of your business was actually built around your mindset. So having the experience that you had working with the other bureaucratic companies, how did you create that mindset from the leadership level down so it trickled throughout the entire organization?
I think as a leader, you need to live your values. While I had this massive goal, and it was certainly financial based, but it was really a pursuit of freedom that I was chasing, a certain lifestyle I wanted to live. Moreover, I wanted to be able to put my head on the pillow at night, knowing that I felt good about the decisions I made today, that I wasn't going to sacrifice my character for that goal. It's just how I'm wired. I'm a blue collar kind of, my word is my bond. I'm a handshake kind of guy. And that's important to me. And so how I treat people in the course of my day really mattered. And really that frustration with the clients that I was always trying to serve was a big part of my reason for wanting to do that. And so really it's kind of like the golden rule, right? Just treat others how you would want to be treated. We set out, one, to treat our clients the way had always wanted to work with them and treat them. And because we knew we would build strong bonds and relationships that way. Additionally, we started working with our staff the same way. We just created a company and a culture that we would want to work for, right? A company and a culture that I would want my daughter to go work for, my son to go work for, right? And I treated people as such. And I'm no pushover with my kids. I wasn't pushover with my employees either. So, it doesn't mean it's a whimsical, fairy tale land, but it does require a little empathy, a little vulnerability. But you also still have to challenge and push and strive for a goal. So we had a saying in the company, do what's right, not what's common.
Do what's right, not what's common.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you within the company culture?
A small example was we would empower our team to make desk level decisions to make things right. So in our business, we traveled nurses all over the country. So at one point we had close to 300 people deployed all over the country. They're in rental cars, they're living in hotels. It's pretty tough for them out there, right? It's not a great existence. I mean, they're living in a hotel for 3 months, 4 months at a time. They get a week off kind of thing. It's messy and mistakes happen. There's a lot of moving parts. So maybe we dropped the ball on a rental car reservation or a stipend or something that we, felt like this was truly in our court. We dropped the ball. My employees had the ability to make it right. And this is where the character comes in, even in situations where other companies or even ourselves, maybe we didn't have to do it, right? It wasn't a requirement for us, but it was the right thing to do. And it was more common for other companies not to make it right in the way that we would, right? Or if we dropped the ball with a client, a lot of times we would just say, hey, this one's on us. Don't pay us for it, right? Even though in our business, it wasn't a requirement to do that. But if we really felt like it was deserved, because I feel strongly that real relationships are built when things are tough and how you respond when things are tough. Anyone can be a great partner when everything's great. How do you respond in the tough times? Do you own your mistake? Do you make it right? Do you do what's right? And even if it hurts the bottom line. And I would say in the short term, it did in a lot of cases. But what I think a lot of people lack in just when they talk about having a brand, that was our brand. We were a reliable partner that you could count on.
So how did you balance that empathy and vulnerability as a leader, but still command respect from your employees?
Well, the respect is earned through my ability to admit my own failures. So the whole culture was built around. We had a culture of excellence. I didn't look to fail very often. I didn't want my team to fail very often. It wasn't rewarded to fail. But when it happened, we recognized quickly that this isn't about an individual. This is about us and a process. And this is an opportunity to improve and get better. And if you really take that growth mindset in the business into your own, you might have to model these things yourself, right? And when I would model, if I dropped the ball, I'd own it in front of everybody. And we had a culture where we challenged everything and everyone every time, including myself and my business partner. Even though we were leading the company, If we were going down a path and our team saw it and they didn't think it was the best call, it was widely accepted to address it, challenge us to see if that's really the best path. And a lot of times we avoided that anyway because I engaged my team in most of those decisions prior to me really making that call. Because most of the time they're the ones who are at the desk level dealing with it. They're going to have better insight into what the real challenge is. So we relied on them a lot. We really empowered them to kind of bring that to us. So this kind of constant improvement sort of model. And that's where it comes from. So the respect earns because of the vulnerability. If you try and pretend that you are infallible and that you know all from the corner office, first of all, everyone knows it's bullshit because they know you're a person and they probably know you personally and they've probably seen you mess up, but you don't feel comfortable calling yourself out. Well, then how are they ever going to admit their mistakes? And then how does anyone get better? Our whole focus was mission over the man. Whether it was me, our business partner, anybody, it was what's the best thing for the business to achieve this goal? And this goes back to designing with the end in mind. Growth, scale, exit, right? And if we're squabbling over personalities and who gets blamed for what, that's slowing us down. It's not supporting the mission. And so me as a leader, it was like, okay, we have a problem. How do we fix it? And then how do we fix it in a way and disseminate that information in a way that this doesn't continue to happen? This is an opportunity to fix a kink, a problem that we're having.
Were you always this type of leader in business?
No. I'm a hard charging guy. I've always been this kind of leader in life, I guess I would say. I was always like the captain of my sports teams and all that kind of stuff. But I think that was mainly because I'm an extremely passionate person. I'm always kind of like a driven person, and that's just how I'm wired. But I wasn't very empathetic or vulnerable initially, right? It was people were widgets to me. I just shoot them up, get the job done. If you don't like it, I'll replace you with somebody else and get someone else in here who's going to do the job. That's how I was like trained in my very first job coming out. That was the environment I came from. And so I just assumed that's just what had to be done. It wasn't until later, as I started working with more tenured employees, a lot of my early job, it was new people out of college and it was just kind of the culture that I came from. And then as I started becoming more of an actual leader in the organization and really owning my own company, I realized that you get more from people when they're bought in and not afraid and they're empowered to they want to have agency in their career. I don't care how much money somebody's making or what cool ping pong table you have in the office. They want agency over what's going on every day. You're going to lose the best people if you can't get them engaged in what's going on in the business and where the business is going. That's the fulfillment that people are looking for in their career. I know people making a lot of money who are unhappy and leave jobs because they just don't feel fulfilled because they're not really part of the decision-making process.
So for you to become this leader, was this trial and error? Was it study? Did you have a mentor? Because your mindset, which absolutely sounds like you need to be writing a book, is unique because it's transformative. And a lot of us have had that experience, or because the audience are business owners and entrepreneurs, they might be in that position where they realize the need for a transition. What do you do to develop that skill set? Because it is a learned skill set.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's an evolution over time. It wasn't some catalyst that really drove. There was a little bit of a catalyst in 2020 with COVID and everything. But I had always been on this arc of growth. The real key here, Jared, for me is a growth mindset and the focus on personal development. Change starts with me. And I just had to grow as an individual. I had to mature. And as I went through different scenarios in life, that was a big part of it. So my personal growth and development, and part of my personal growth and development is reading and learning, consuming books constantly. And then more importantly, disseminating that information down to one or two things that are really important to me from that book and then applying it. And I think that's a gap that a lot of people, I'm sure I know plenty of people who read books, listen to books, they don't actually apply a lot of this stuff. From a leadership perspective, I read Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. And that was one where I was already doing some of these things, but it was like, no, this has to be an absolute in everything you do in all aspects of your life. This idea that it begins and ends with me. And if there's a breakdown, it was on me some way, shape, or form. And to stop looking outwardly and always start looking inwardly. So that was a big shift for me there. But I think it's a combination of life experience, personal development, education.
So I'm looking at it on my bookshelf. I'm an avid reader as well. I'm going to put that one. I've got 2 books ahead of it. That's going to be the next one that I read because it's interesting. And I'm just thinking about my company and as it's growing, and what I've been working on and some of the challenges that I've even faced over the last year, it has been interesting because when I face a challenge, it is put your head down, work as hard as you possibly can to get through or get over that challenge and set things aside, like laser focus, which is not always the best thing to do as I'm growing and learning as an entrepreneur, but also as a business leader. So developing, and first of all, even having conversations like what we're having, did you have mentors and other business leaders that you could turn to that you learned from as well?
A little bit,
Okay.
not so much personally. I mean, I didn't even join a mastermind until after I sold the company.
Wow.
So, but I had an amazing business partner, and both of us, we didn't really have, I guess I would say, real life mentors, but we were both, there's plenty of business mentors on YouTube, things like that. You don't need to actually sit in a room with these people to absorb their information, and getting close to the best possible people in the world. Mm-hmm. is even harder, right? But they're all putting out free content with detailed information, and they're writing books. And if you really invest yourself and stop and don't just listen to these podcasts for the sake of entertainment on a car ride, take action from it. There's so much I learned. I just talking to somebody one day, like, who do you credit for this stuff? I was like, Google. Google. I used to Google every problem I ever had. It was the best mentor ever. I mean, we would come across problems, and the very first thing we would do is just Google this issue. And it became a thing in the company. Like, a teammate would come to me like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, have you Googled it yet? Because it was like, we're in the best age ever. You have all the world's information at your fingertips at any moment. It's there for you. From putting together shelves in your garage from a YouTube video like I've done, or, understanding EBITDA, and like getting into, an understanding of what is a good multiple in your marketplace and all that. It's all out there for you. You have to take the time and just, AI's out there now, right? It's like writing a good prompt. And I think it's the same concept. You just always have to be challenging yourself to ask the right questions.
Study is actually so important for every single thing. And I love that you're talking about that. So over the last year, I've read more books in the last year than I've collectively read in 40 years of my life, period. Like, I have. But my secret for reading is I have the physical book, a pen in hand. I'll listen to the audible of the book. And because I have dyslexia and things such as that, I hear very quickly. So I can listen to 2.5 to 3.5 and get through an 8.5 hour book in like 2.5 hours. So it's actually become fun reading. I retain more information than I've ever retained. I stay awake. I don't fall asleep like I used to when I would read. And I'm very focused on the content. And then if I really like the content, I have my Claude AI recorder that I'll record the audible after on this device after I've read the book. I'll transcribe it through the AI. Then I'll put it into chat and have chat give me actionable items that I can take away from that book to incorporate in my business and also give to my team. So for the first time in my life, I'm actually activating what I'm learning in books, and it is opening my world. And it's like everything you need to know is in books, and it's so important.
Yeah, it's huge. And I usually pull out 1 to 3 key concepts from any book, right? One book I love is Great by Choice, Jim Collins. It's, I think, second in From Good to Great. And like the 20-mile march and bullets, not cannonballs, fire bullets, not cannonballs, were 2 things. I mean, if you were to ask me a bunch of questions about that book, I probably wouldn't know. But those are 2 things. And I've actively deployed those in my business. Like the bullets, not cannonballs, a good example of that was we wanted to expand into more of a pure consulting service line. So this is a combination of designing with the end in mind, and then also fire bullets, not cannonballs, right? Because I think as entrepreneurs, we always want to follow this shiny object. And we had seen a vein that we could kind of run through this consulting angle where we could grow the business. And we did successfully do it to a degree, but there was a decision that needed to be made. Do we build this out? Do we chase this shiny object and like really build out a team and hire people and all these sort of things? And I had just been listening to the book at the same time. And I was like, let's fire a bullet here. Let's not just fire a cannonball. Let's test it out. Let's see where this goes. Let's just, I viewed it as part of my job as a leadership team. I empowered my team And then I would focus on long-term strategy. And what I would say is I joked around and say, I'm going in the lab this is where I would play and call clients and ask questions. Say, hey, if we did this, would this be something you'd be interested in? What would it need to look like? I kind of poll the market, so to speak, build networks and relationships with people in that space. And it's a big part of what I did towards the tail end of our business before we sold. And ultimately, we looked at that and we said, okay, we're going to have a certain amount of runway before we go to market to sell. This is the lift. We think there's an opportunity here from the client, but ultimately, we're going to let this go and we're going to choose to partner with consulting firms versus build our own consulting business. Because by testing and just firing a couple bullets and doing some light consulting work, we found partners and we realized, hey, there's a quicker path here. And that quicker path aligns with our exit strategy. And we can keep the team and our resources and our energy focused on growing our core business while taking advantage of this other opportunity, maybe to a lesser degree, but we didn't distract the team either. And that is the concept of staying on that 20-mile march, right? Just every day, just plug, being consistent. So I kind of coupled those two things right from that book in a major pivot kind of decision within the business about 3 years before we sold. And it really helped us stay on track and continue to grow our core, which is ultimately what we sold for, but adding the value of this opportunity that we saw, maybe to a lesser degree than if we build it out ourselves, but we already knew how far we wanted to go. We knew we were getting close to that 5 to 7 year mark. We knew the revenue was kind of getting in that range, and we knew it'd be a big distraction. So that's a good example of like designing with the end in mind, leveraging the knowledge and the information that I'm bringing in to actively deploy that in the decision-making process of my business.
Okay. So you've been through that. You navigated it successfully. It sounds like the book was a big help for that. What advice would you give an entrepreneur who is looking to make a pivot or add something to their business that they haven't done before to make sure that it's actually going to add value to the operations?
The first thing I would say is, have you really exhausted where you're at? I think so many times we hear people say, there's just not enough opportunity in this space. I only sold to acute care hospitals, which is like realistically maybe had 2,500 to 3,000 targets throughout the entire country to call on. And we built a $50 million business, could have stuck with it and grown it even further. So people say, there's not enough opportunity in my marketplace. One, you're probably wrong. There definitely is. And you probably don't need to reinvent the wheel as much as you need to make some minor tweaks as to how you approach it. And so before you do anything, talk to your clients. Talk to the marketplace in which you want to enter. I'm very surprised at how little people do that. Like really ask them, what does it need to look like? This is what I'm trying to do. I mean, hopefully if you're going to make a pivot as a business, you've already built up some credibility and some customers and things like that. You should have those relationships that you can lean into and say, if I was to go down this path, what would it need to look like for you to want to buy it and be successful? How would this, and moreover, how would this add value to you in your space? I think if you talk to the marketplace, they're going to tell you what change you need to make and the adjustments you can do. I think so often we plan in our own circle in our office late at night, and we're not really listening to people as to just look to actually help people. That was so much of what I did. I said, okay, let's stop for a second. We built this way. Is this really how it works for you? What does it look like from your side, Mr. Client? Like, how is this adding value? What other things could we add value that you're not seeing now? And they would tell us what it needs to look like. That's how we found the consulting opportunity a lot of times, right? Just really seeking to help.
So if you're an entrepreneur, the way in which you can figure out a pivot or growth opportunities in your business is literally poll the audience. You have a built-in clientele, your client, that if they're continuing to work with you, they obviously believe in your ability to deliver the product or service. Ask them what they would want to see, and that can help you make a very clear decision on what could be saleable in the marketplace and if it adds real value.
Yeah, and from an operations perspective, I always try and keep it somewhat adjacent to where you're at.
Correct.
That you can use the same team, the same knowledge. If you go too far and you have to rebuild all the knowledge, experience, essentially have to create a second whole team, just think about the time that's going to take from your perspective to train, implement, all new process, all new education, everything. Now, if it's something that you already have a knowledge base, you have that same team, you can leverage your existing team operationally to branch off and just take on some more of that work, and you don't have to redo workflow and trainings and all these sort of things. The key is always make tweaks, not overhaul changes, because it's going to slow you down. I mean, one of the reasons we were able to go from 0 to 50 million in 7 years with no outside capital is because we didn't make a lot of massive changes. We just did constant tweaks. We focused on being excellent at what we did, not doing a bunch of different things. And I think that's some of where I would try and tell people first and foremost, are you excellent at what you do now? Are you really the best at it? Because if you're not, why go do something else? Get better at what you're already doing. Then go out and do something else.
I love the "are you excellent at what you do now?" And it's really important because entrepreneurs in general can, to your point, go after that next shiny object and completely get distracted. So how do you put yourself in the mindset where you're putting those blinders on and you're focusing on creating that best product, best in class product or service, and not get distracted by all of the potential that's out there in the marketplace? How would you advise an entrepreneur to put that cap on and stay there?
It's hard because it requires patience. And
Patience.
if you were willing to take the risk to start a business, be willing to take the risk to continue to bet on yourself to be great. Right? I think that was part of it, because I think you start to get to a point where you get that claustrophobia, so to speak, right? This is all we're doing. Oh my gosh, there's all this untapped things. And to stay there almost seems riskier than going to do something else. In anything, if you want to get in better shape at the gym, you don't go sporadically, right? You keep going, the momentum happens with time. And I think most people don't understand truly the amount of time it's going to take for it to happen. So they get impatient. And I would just focus on being patient and consistent and getting better every day long before I went and tried to tackle some new challenge. Because now you're going to be half-assed at two things instead of great at one.
You know, you hear so much online and all these fake gurus and business mentors about create the multiple streams of income and always to be diversified. I cannot actually think of one individual who has built success, even if they have multiple companies now, did it building that through multiple companies to start. There was one thing that they focused on. And then once they executed on that one thing, they moved on to that next thing. So I love the idea of patience, consistency, and get better every single day at that one thing before you move on to the next as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And just from an X's and O's operation, increasing your profitability, your profit margin, right? You want to be able to scale is creating more profitability with less, ultimately. And so when you start to do all these other things, now you need more people, more resources. You're increasing your budget.
Right.
And maybe you're increasing your revenue, but you're probably not increasing your overall profitability, your net income, because you have all these investments. So how do you grow within where you're at with less? And you're only going to do that over time once your people get more efficient. I mean, we had recruiters. And in the beginning, they'd get to managing 20 or 30 people and they'd kind of feel maxed out, right?
Right.
And they'd say, well, I need an assistant, or I need this, I need help to grow. I need more resources to grow my business. And being the good leader I am, I just denied them that and said, no, I think you'll find a way. I trust you. Like, you're going to just have to get better with your time. And this is an example of how this works at the desk level. But towards the end, these same folks who a few years before that were saying, I can't manage more than 30 people. Like, there's no time in my day. We're managing 50, 60, 70 people. They created systems and process and efficiencies, and they got really good at what they did because that's all they did every day. They could do it in half the time.
So talk to me about how you built out those SOPs for your business, because time, as we know, cannot be managed. Everybody gets 24 hours a day until be honest, you don't have 24 hours a day, but you know what that means. So the only thing you can manage is your activities. So I know in your field, you weren't an expert at every single job that you had employed for your business. So how did you build out the efficiencies and those SOPs so those same reps could go from 30 to 50 to 70 different individuals that they were managing?
Yeah, some of it was investments from us, but the investments came after working with the team to really fine tune the process. So the first thing we would do is just reverse engineer all of our stakeholders, from a consultant. So the people we deployed were our consultants. So we'd send consultants out to client sites. Our recruiters managed that relationship. And they also had some interaction with our operations team who would handle their onboarding, their background checks, all these sort of things we needed for them to physically go into a hospital. There's a lot of health screenings, things like that. And then we had salespeople who would manage the client relationships, find and manage clients. And there's crossover between all those groups. Essentially, we just reverse engineered every step in the process, from invoicing to the client reach out to consultant onboarding, all those sort of things. And we just work backwards and we'd say, we just work with those teams and say, where are you getting the most challenges? What are the most questions? Where are the problems coming in at? And it would say, a good example would be like, well, we're getting drug testing back too late, which is causing delayed starts, which makes the client upset and it makes the consultant upset. Okay, well, now I've got 3 stakeholders who are all upset. We need to find a way to expedite this drug screening process, right? And then we would just kind of rank, like, what's the biggest problem? What's the biggest bang for our buck? And then that's where I would come in as the leader. Now I'm going to go shop new vendors who can solve that problem, right? We need it back quicker. We need a reliable partner. I can solve for that. But they're bringing that to me. And just steps in process. We would just throughout, whenever we had a breakdown, because we'd go over these challenges like once a week in our team huddle, right? And so if we had a breakdown, we'd stop and we'd just kind of ask about it. What led to this? Why did it go on? And this goes back to my earlier point. This wasn't who messed up, right? It wasn't a blame game. It was a diagnosis. Where did this problem come from? This is a symptom of a problem. So, okay, how do we fix the root cause of this? And sometimes it couldn't be fixed. Sometimes it's just an anomaly and it happens. But if you see a pattern, I think this goes back to creating fulfillment for your employees. Your job as a leader is to remove the roadblocks to make their job easier and make them more efficient and effective at their job. And so if they keep running into a problem and they're making mistakes all the time, instead of you just yelling at them because they're making a mistake, maybe ask why that is happening. And they're probably going to explain it to you exactly how they ended up there. And yeah, of course, occasionally they drop the ball. Okay. But normally there's something wrong in the process that could be fixed or that you could remove. And that's typically what we would do. So we work with them. And then we actually had them create the SOPs based on that. And then I would review that with them in the process and just say, walk me through it. Almost like an outside consultant. I would come into my business and say, as if I was the business analyst or the consultant, and say, guys, walk me through everything in the process. And they would do that. And then I would challenge, well, what about this? Could we remove that? Or what's the holdup here? Why is that there? Right. And then we would just figure out how to remove it quickly.
So an open channel of communication is key to building out successful SOPs for your employees to operate the business at its maximum level of efficiency. And
having them actively engage in the creation of it. This goes back to the agency. When we ended up selling the company and we had a technology integration with the new company, with a CRM, I wasn't involved in any of those meetings. The company that acquired us had a consulting firm come in and ask us, don't you want to be in these meetings? I'm like, no, I have no clue about any of it. I don't want to know. I wasn't involved in the creation of it. And they came back later and said, we've never worked with a team that knew this so well. Your team is all over it. I'm like, yeah, because they created it. It's their baby. They made it. And they're passionate about it. And they were passionate about it. They were arguing with the consultants. No, you can't do it that way. That's not going to work. Right. They didn't and that was our culture. We had a culture of challenging everything to make sure that it was the best. Personalities and feelings were not real important to us. It was the mission above everything.
So would you say that challenging everything within your business is one of the key things that helped you recover from the 2020 50% loss in revenue?
Yeah, it actually gave us an opportunity to dive in deeper to where problems were, because our business just dried up, right? So while we were out there scrounging for anything we can get our hands on and fighting, tooth and nail for business, we also, in the very beginning, were like, okay, well, we've got time. Why don't we use this time to slow down and take a look at what's not working, right? What were all these problems, these headaches that we kept saying we wanted to fix that we just couldn't find the time or didn't make it a priority to do? And we worked on that. And it really opened our eyes up a lot to opportunity that was there. Oh, okay, why aren't we doing this more often? This is great. We just cleaned out a bunch of problems. And then it positioned us for when things rebounded to be even better, right? So we didn't waste that time that when our business was slow, we utilized it to clean house and kind of make ourselves better and more efficient, which was great because when things rebounded, we were able to just go and focus on delivery.
It's incredible. So you built a successful business. You exceeded your target. You exited. What are you doing next? And how are you giving back to the entrepreneurial community?
Honestly, man, I promised my family and myself some time off just to relax. I wouldn't even call it relaxing. I set a personal goal to do an amateur MMA fight So I basically train full time right now. Like it's 15 hours of actual training a week generally between eating and recovery and driving all over the place. It's basically a full-time job now that I'm doing. I'm 42, so kind of a bold move, but I figure the way I looked at it was I get the rest of my life to work and be an entrepreneur and do those sort of things. Right now, my daughter is 11. My son's about to be 8. I read an amazing, speaking of books and taking action on them, was Die with Zero. I forget the author's name. There's an amazing book called Die with Zero. And he just talks about these stages in your life. Like, I'm never going to be 42 again. I'm not going to have this kind of health that I have now. So I'm taking this opportunity now to invest in these physical pursuits that are important to me, because my physical health was really foundational in my ability to be a successful entrepreneur. But also now it's like, I like to challenge myself. So I'm like, how far can I take this? So I started training jiu-jitsu. I'm like, all right, maybe I can do a fight. So I'm pushing into that uncharted waters and doing that for myself. At the same time, I did just start a coaching consulting business. I'm just slowly growing it. I don't want to take up a lot of my time. I'm being judicious as to who I take on. But really the focus of that business, I mean, yes, X's and O's of business is going to be part of it. But moreover, I want to make great leaders and people who are happy with their life. I went through that challenge of being unhealthy and unhappy and overly focused on success in business, and ultimately found that I wasn't happy, which really means I wasn't successful at all. And I made that shift while still growing my business and exiting. I got healthy. I repaired the relationships in my life and things like that. And I know it's all possible with personal development. And so I want to help entrepreneurs who are struggling with that to not just in one aspect of their life, but in all aspects of their lives win and be successful. And that's going to be different for everybody. For some people, it might mean you need to give up some of your creature comforts and the wealth, the financial wealth that you're chasing, and maybe focus more on your relationships and your health. And for others, it might be you need to buckle down more, and grow your finances. That's really going to get you where you want to be. So it's all different for different folks, but that's where I want to focus. And I'm currently writing a book to that end. A working title is Dream, Design, Do, which is kind of the mantra on my website. It's this whole concept of it doesn't matter what it is you want to do, whether it's health, relationships, business, anything. You can do it. You want to be a 42-year-old and go do an MMA fight? You can do it. You just gotta figure out have the dream, believe in yourself that you can do it, and then put a plan in place. That's the design part, right? Figure it out. And that's the part where most people get stuck. They spend too much time working on the plan and it's got to be perfect. Screw that, dude. Just go. Start moving. Get enough of a plan. Get a North Star. Get going. And then the most importantly, do the work.
Awesome. So I do want to just recap the book. It's called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. Die with Zero, getting all you can from your money and your life. That is definitely going on the list. That's super. That's awesome.
It informed a lot for me as to how do I want to model out the last part of my life, right? And I looked at my life in like 3 phases. Really, phase 1 for me, I mean, I don't come from money. I'm a working class guy. My dad's a longshoreman. When I got out of college, I had $1,000 and I had to move back into my childhood bedroom, right? I mean, and that was in 2005. So less than 20 years later, I'm in a completely different world. And I credit that to, growth every day, just trying to continue to grow. So phase 1 for me was, how do I create wealth for myself? And to your earlier point, it was get focused on one thing. I mean, there's a couple different ways to do it, right? You either build long-term, some would say like either real estate or a stock market, and you just stay smart and you keep a job and you do that on the side until it's able to kind of be your full-time thing and you grow. I don't have the patience for that. But that's a way to go for sure, especially if you like your career and you don't mind working for someone else. You inherit money, you win the lotto, or you start a business. I mean, that's kind of, there's really only so many ways to do it, unless you're a treasure hunter. And so for me, it was like brick 1 was, I'm eventually going to start a business. I didn't care what it was. I knew I was going to do something. So that was it. And that's what I did. And I put all my eggs in that basket. And the whole reason me and my partner sold the company is we wanted to have more freedom. And we always viewed it as an asset to sell to get us to this first level. So for me, I'm now kind of entering into like phase 2, and that's adjusted for me a little bit. I really want to help serve others more and inspire others to live happier lives. Because I think somewhere along the way, me looking to achieve that first phase goal, I did get a little lost, and lessons learned, and hoping to share those with folks. But really, I'm trying to build massive wealth, and it's not just so I can have more shit. To be honest with you, I'm not a materialistic person. I want to have wealth so I can have an impact. I really do. I feel like there's there's far too many people who accumulate wealth and just keep it. And this kind of model, and this goes back to the die with zero. It's like we get old, we save. We try and live the last couple good years of our life, and then we donate it to our kids, and 2 generations later, it's gone because they blew it on God knows what, right? So my goal is to create wealth and create a kind of a money-making machine over time. But through that, help other people change their lives, because I know what it did for me. And in our business, we aligned our compensation and part of the business with the company as we grew it. So when we sold, a lot of our teammates earned significant sums of money that they were able to have life-changing events with. And so I want to continue that process as I go and build and sell companies. I want to really reward team members in a way that they can have life-changing money and can kind of continue to pay that forward. And kind of phase 3, I want to be more service-focused.
So, and what does service-focused mean to you?
Community-wise and culturally, that's partly the reason I'm doing these podcasts. I feel like if I'm really going to have an impact on the world, I need financial wealth, but I need cultural relevance. And I feel like there's a bit of a weakness kind of in society these days, and a woe is me sort of mindset. I think it's hurting our children. I think it's hurting our country. And I think people need to get back to a culture of personal accountability and self-belief. And that's some of what I'm trying to teach and preach. And when I go out and speak to people, that's what I try and.
Well, Brian, I can tell you, I learned a lot and took a lot away from this and was taking extensive notes. So this is going to be a really fun podcast for our audience, because you have a great mindset around being an entrepreneur. So now we're going to move into the fun section, which is the rapid fire section. And then you'll tell everybody where they can reach you. So give me quick answers to these questions. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
There is a zombie apocalypse and you have to get out of your house and protect your family. What is your one weapon of choice?
I have got a assault shotgun, so I'm taking that.
Awesome. Favorite business quote?
Ooh, business quote.
Or it could be a life quote.
Yeah, well, the life quote, the one I go by is hell is getting to the end of your life and seeing the person you could have been.
Oh.
And heaven is seeing your reflection.
Wow, that's amazing. So give me 3 money-saving things that entrepreneurs can do in 2025 for their business.
3 money-saving tips that entrepreneurs can have for their business?
Yes.
I would say, replace yourself as fast as possible. It'll actually save you money in the long run. It doesn't sound like it, but it will. Outsource when possible and invest in technology early. These sound like they're money spending things, but they will actually save you money in the long run. And let's see, what's another one? Oh, and focus on profit, not revenue.
Profit first, baby. Profit first.
So many people talking. I tell revenue on the sale number, but we never managed revenue at all. We just focused on profit constantly.
What is the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome in your life to build the success that you've built?
That's a great question. Hubris.
I love it. And you have overcome it and you've built a ton of success. Brian McNally, tell the audience where they can connect with you if they'd like to do so.
Instagram, the Brian McNally, and then my website, brianmcnally.com, has all my social media links and how to contact me there.
Awesome. Brian, thank you for joining us on 0 to 100.
Thanks, Jared. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to 0 to 100 podcast. We hope you feel inspired and ready to accelerate your business. Remember, your journey to success starts with a single step. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for greatness. For more resources and show notes, visit jaredguyrandolph.com. We'll see you next time.